Welcome to the Darkstream, Vox Day, voxday.net, and unauthorized.tv. Thanks for tuning in. We have DLive going. I'm told audio and video are good. I've already got 7 people on the unauthorized chat, and the number is growing. And super chats are live. So it was interesting listening to, or reading, I should say, on Bounding into Comics, some statements that were made by Bob Iger, the CEO of the Devil Mouse, which is how we tend to refer to Disney. And I'm going to read you a few of the things that he said, just because it's kind of remarkable in light of the current situation. So where do I have Bounding into Comics? I got a link somewhere. There it is. Okay. So the Walt Disney Company CEO Bob Iger claims the notion that Disney is in any way sexualizing our children, quite frankly, is preposterous and accurate. Now remember, Bob Iger is a every single time. So everything he says is probably a lie. He's not necessarily lying all the time, but he is serving his father, the devil, all the time. You don't get into a position like he's in unless you are unspeakably awful. So he says, the Walt Disney Company CEO, Bob Iger, recently did a sit-down interview with CNBC's David Faber while attending the Sun Valley Conference in Idaho, which, by the way, is a gathering of elite globalists, quite a few of whom are probably devil worshippers and are probably engaged in all the sort of things that we now know that they're involved in, where he denied that the company is sexualizing children. At one point during the interview, Faber asked Iger, what about Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who is going to be on the hustings, so to speak, for the next year? And he's made this part of his campaign attacking Disney, saying it's a woke corporation. Wow, what an accusation, huh? What's kind of funny is the way that they act like the most mild, gentle, delicate questioning is portrayed as this, major attack. Faber then quoted DeSantis, "We put the company on a pedestal, but they've really embraced the idea of getting these sexualized content in the program line that I'm really not ready to cross." I mean, that's what he said. I quoted DeSantis there. How do you respond to that? Iger answered, "So what we've said publicly is that we are concerned that he's decided to retaliate against the company for the position the company took on pending legislation in that state." Now, what this is, understand, is, and the Dark Herald has covered this in detail on the Archaven blog, this is a special corporation that the state of Florida set up a long time ago. And they've got this special corporation that gives them complete power over everything in the area. And for legal reasons, they had to maintain the fiction that Disney was separate from this corporation. but the position that they're arguing here, there was saying that, well, you're attacking Disney by doing this, which is true. And so what he was essentially admitting to was that Disney was breaking the law. It was a really well-executed trap on the part of the Florida people who were going after Disney. But he says, and frankly, the company was within its right, even though I'm not sure it was handled very well. That's his admission that he really screwed up and admitted to something he never should have admitted. It was within its right to speak up on an issue, constitutionally protected right of free speech. Nobody cares about Disney speaking up about the existence of this special corporation. The point is, he equated the two entities. And to retaliate against the company in a way that would be harmful to the business was not something that we could sit back and tolerate. So we have filed a lawsuit to protect our First Amendment rights there and to protect our business, frankly. This is complete nonsense. Read the Dark Herald's pieces on this on the Archuman blog if you want to understand the whole thing. But, I mean, it is a disastrous situation for Disney. The other issues that you referenced, look, the last thing I want for the company is for the company to be drawn into any culture wars, Iger said. Of course, because they don't want to fight it. They just want to roll over a unprotesting white Christian base and wipe it out. They really don't want to fight any culture wars. They just want to change the culture. They just want to change the religion. They just want to change the demographics. It's not an accident that they are constantly substituting white people or substituting diversities for Europeans. They hate Europeans. They hate Europe. It's not an accident that they're constantly attacking Christian values. They hate Christianity. They hate Jesus Christ. None of these things are an accident. And I'm just as guilty as any other parent. When my kids are little, they loved The Little Mermaid. We even went to Disneyland Paris twice. It wasn't until we figured out, wait a minute, this stuff is bad, that we began refusing to support it, refusing to help it out. And we'll get to that. But, we've operated for almost 100 years as a company making product that we're actually proud of it in terms of its impact on the world. Okay, so he's trying to deny that they're woke. He's trying to deny that they're committed to social justice. And then he comes out and says, we're proud of its impact on the world. What is that impact? He says, I joke every once in a while that we're there to manufacture fun, he added. We're there to tell great stories, which is total nonsense. Disney doesn't tell great stories. Disney doesn't tell any new stories. The Little Mermaid is Hans Christian Andersen. Snow White, and a lot of the stories are from the Brothers Grimm. They're literally leeches and parasites off of European culture, the very European culture that they're trying to destroy. Remember, Walt Disney was directly and openly opposed to the Jews, who eventually took over his corporation and inverted it. Now Disney apparently had some issues himself. But the Disney Corporation today is completely 100% reprehensible evil. There's no question about this. There's no possible way that you can deny this. But they're just there to tell great stories and have fun. Faber then interjected and asserted that Nazis were standing outside of one of Disney's parks. You can't be happy when there's literally Nazis standing outside of the front gates of the park. See, this is how you know that Iger's a Jew. And that the guy questioning him probably is too, because, you literally cannot talk to practically any figure in the media who is Jewish without them bringing Nazis into it in the first 5 minutes of conversation, whether it's relevant or not. There were no Nazis outside of Disney. If anything, Disney probably hired them in order to try to pose as the victim. And, Iger reacted. That was horrifying, quite frankly. Remember, he was asked, you've done all this shit. You've done all this social justice shit. People don't like it. Your movies are bombing. People aren't coming to the parks the way they used to be. More and more people hate you. More and more people think you're awful. And so like, and within literally 3 paragraphs, they're talking about Nazis. The National Socialist Party has been dead since 1945. Nazis don't exist. It's, whether the Azov battalion or, some Finnish LARPers running around. It doesn't exist. It only exists in order to allow Jews to play the victim. There's plenty of actual, real, existent ideologies out there. The German National Socialist Workers' Party is not one of them. It's dead. It's been dead for a long time. I mean, what's interesting to me is that if you pay any attention to the intellectuals, to the neoclowns who actually matter, you never see the likes of Henry Kissinger or Robert Kagan talking about Nazis. They're concerned about Russia. They're much more concerned about China. Why? Because those are the actual ideologies. They're much more concerned about real nationalism, as in nations that stand up for their own people and have no interest in paper citizens or fake citizens or hyphenated citizens and other forms of paper national. Anyhow, he says, that was horrifying, quite frankly, and it is concerning to me that anyone would encourage a level of intolerance or even hate that, frankly, could even become dangerous action, that could become turned into some dangerous act of some sort. So it's concerning to me. But I don't really want to engage in the specifics, except to say that it's not our goal to be involved in a culture war. Our goal is to continue to tell wonderful stories and have a positive impact on the world. Again, define positive. We are a preeminent entertainer in the world, and we're proud of our track record there. These losers haven't created anything. They took over one of the more preeminent entertainment companies, and they've driven it directly into the ground. They bought Star Wars, drove it into the ground. They bought Marvel, drove it into the ground. That's a track record that they're proud of? And then he throws in, the notion that Disney is in any way sexualizing our children, quite frankly, is preposterous and inaccurate, I grad. There you see the forked tongue. Every single Disney entertainer, whether they're boys or girls, they go the same way. A lot of them show signs of having been molested. A lot of them show signs of having been abused underage. And we're just not supposed to notice this. What's her name? Bella Thorne. She's running around literally making porn movies, directing them. I'm sure that's just an accident, right? Britney Spears is entirely off her gourd, almost certainly because of how she was treated when she was on the Disney Channel for whatever, that Musketeers Club thing. When asked if he was going to escalate his engagement, remember the engagement that they don't want to have, Iger replied, "We're going to keep doing what we do best and be proud of what we're doing and be mindful of the environment, of course." Translation, we may have gone a little too far. We might need to back it off a bit for a while. I've said this publicly. We're sensitive to the interests and the needs of the great audiences we are seeking to attract globally, and we'll continue to do that. Now, what I like about Bounding Into Comics and why I really like Bounding Into Comics coverage of stuff is that they're not afraid to just call this bullshit out. There's a lot to unpack here. First off, Bob Iger is clearly doing damage control, and the company is indeed attempting to indoctrinate children into heinous and evil ideologies such as transgenderism, as well as attempting to sexualize them with programming focused on sexual orientation and gender identity. The company's position was made abundantly clear when they came out against the pending legislation Florida Parental Rights and Education Bill that has now become law. Okay, so that may have been what he was referring to rather than the thing related to the corporation. Anyhow, Bonding into Comics. Read the piece, read the article. I'll put the link here in the chat. It's really good, and it completely hammers Iger and the Devil Mouse with regards to Iger's false claims. Now, here's the crazy thing. The crazy thing is that despite the fact that Disney is losing money hand over fist and is down to something like its last $10 billion in cash, which, you know, sounds like a lot, except for the fact that its expenses are so high that that's enough to last like 4 weeks. They gave Iger, they extended his contract as CEO through 2026. Personally, I think this is great. You know, leave this inept loser in charge and just drive that fucker right into the ground. Leave a crater. You know. And so, you know, it's, Sam says, I'm happy I could play a small part in Disney's downfall as a contractor who did almost nothing. Yeah, I actually had the opportunity to work with Disney when they were first getting into doing computer games. I didn't want anything to do with them, not because of anything ideological, but just because they had a pretty bad reputation in the industry for not being able to do decent games. You know, they had this great art, this fantastic 2D art, and they just couldn't somehow translate it into playable games. Mickey Mouse Club was the 90s grooming funnel. It does appear to be that way. Swedish Trash Band has a good point. Lefty's ability to run out of infinite resources is quite impressive. Yeah, how do you manage to lose money with Star Wars? I got a note from a friend who follows these things. Let me see if I can dig up that note that he sent me this morning. I just laughed when I saw it. Yeah, so he says, hang on a second here. Somebody sent all kinds of questions. This is funny. About something else. So hang on a second. Where are we? Yeah, here we go. Star Wars lost 95% of the readers of its fiction. The Star Wars High Republic books and graphic novel series has experienced a 95% drop in sales. How do you do that? Well, Amazon is showing us how. You know, how do you destroy the sales of Tolkien's novels? Although I don't know if they can. I don't know if they'd be able to, because people turn to the original stuff when they reject the abuse of the copyright holders. You know, the problem with Disney is that they own the copyrights going way, 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 way back. But Akabear says, I'm waiting for the Princess Anne Frank Disney film. The thing is, they would probably try to do something like that. You know, the more that they believe they are justified in what they're doing, the more that they claim people like you and me are, you know, rejecting them because we're Nazis, no matter how ridiculous the claim might be, the more that they're going to keep doubling down. That's exactly what they did by bringing back Iger and then extending his contract. They're doubling down. And as we know, that's what SJWs do. Veritas suggests Iger's extension could just be a golden parachute, probably a change in control provision. It's possible, certainly. The Dark Herald, and by the way, the Dark Herald does a marvelous job of covering this stuff. But he talks specifically about how in June they gave Iger's successor and predecessor, Bob Chapek, they gave him an extension in June and they got rid of him in December. So that's entirely possible. And so, it's going to be interesting to see how it proceeds. But the thing is, we know it's not going to get better. Because and the good thing is that enough parents are no longer subject to their sentimental attachment to the Disney of their childhood. I definitely was. We went to both Disneyland and Disney World when I was quite young. I think there's pictures of me on those like little cars that drive on the track, dating back to when I was like 5 years old. I always had a very positive attitude towards Disney. Now, I don't even call it Disney. I call it the Devil Mouse. Because that's what it is. And that is how Satan works in the world, is he takes good things, he takes positive things, and he perverts and inverts them. Turns them wicked, turns them evil. And the best thing that you can do to fight it is to speak the truth and teach your children to hate what is wicked, teach them to hate what is evil. For whatever reason, the boomers have never been able to turn against their childhood and adolescent sentiments. It doesn't matter what comes out about David Bowie, banging underage kids. It doesn't matter what comes out about the Beatles being their popularity being manufactured, all that sort of stuff. They can't give it up. Gen X has done a better job but it's taken us a long time. The millennials, I think, actually did a better job, perhaps because they may have been a bit less attached to the declining product that was being produced. Also, they had, more options. I always thought it was interesting, especially when I was, looking at my kids, my friends' kids, and that sort of thing. I said probably 15 years ago, long before this successful Mario movie, I said, if Nintendo ever gets into doing a theme park and movies, they're going to wipe Disney out, because all the kids of the Gen Xers that I know were all much more attached to Princess Peach, to Mario, to Luigi, to Yoshi, all of the Nintendo world stuff. They were much more attached to that than they were to the Disney stuff. They liked the Disney stuff. I'm not saying they didn't like the Disney stuff, but they're much more attached to it. And so I think that's why, conservatives and Christians have been attempting to push back against the Devil Mouse since the 80s. Back when they started doing their first gay days in the 80s, I think it was around 1985, maybe 1988. Sometime in the middle to late 80s, Disney did their first gay days. And a bunch of prominent Christian conservatives called for a boycott. They got nowhere. They accomplished nothing. Maybe it brought down attendance a little bit, but the thing is that people couldn't give it up. The boomers, because that's what it was boomer parents, and to a lesser extent silent generation parents, couldn't give it up. And but now what we're seeing is that people have the ability to stop supporting the organizations that hate them. We've seen it with Bud Light. Bud Light has actually gotten to the point now where they're openly admitting they made a mistake and, trying to bury Dylan, whatever his name is, in South America somewhere. And, they've fired the various executives responsible. Nobody cares. Nobody's buying it. Nobody's going, oh, gee, we understand that you made a mistake and that you're sorry and we're going to come back and buy. No. I would be willing to bet that 90% of the people who previously bought Bud Light and stopped buying Bud Light will never buy Bud Light or any other Budweiser product again, because now we understand there is a cultural war. Now we understand that it is real. Sam says, it seems like Xers, millennials, and Zoomers are actually willing to withdraw consent. Exactly. And that's what's necessary. You cannot cooperate with the wicked. You cannot cooperate with evil. You cannot support with your financial resources those things that hate you. Now, it's easy for me because, frankly, those places, I get kicked off of those things. I get kicked off of Google. I'm still kicked off of Twitter. The only two things that haven't actually kicked me off yet are Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, none of which I actually use. I just have them, so that we don't have somebody pretending to be me up there trying to, create false narratives and so forth. But why would I use these things? Why should you support the organizations and individuals that hate you and are diametrically opposed to it? PD says, have you appealed or not interested in returning? I'm not interested in returning. I couldn't care less about being on Twitter. I actually have more followers on Gab with 35.1 thousand than I did it with my 27 peak on Twitter, which was 27,000. Now, I'd probably have more than 35,000 if I'd been on Twitter that whole time. But the point is that I'm not really interested in reaching out. If people want to come find me, they can. And frankly, I'd rather have people reading my books than, listening to me talk on video or whatever. It's a much more structured environment. I think it's a much more serious environment. But I do understand different people have different preferences, and that's all fine. Sam says, Twitter is on its way out, total clown show. Maybe, but I don't think it's as much of a clown show as Facebook. I mean, think about it. They completely failed with Meta, the whole metaverse thing. Their Threads thing is not working. And for all of his, nonsense, and Musk is not a good guy and he's not on our side or anything like that, but whoever he's working with is considerably less of a moron, because what they're doing with their $8 a month subscription model is smart. And also they're actually allowing their popular users to get some ad revenue. It's the exact opposite of what YouTube and Facebook and everybody else, as soon as people start making money, they destroy it. You know, Owen Benjamin was doing really, really well on YouTube. He was doing really, really well for YouTube. So they kicked him off. I mean, that is not how you are successful. You know, they are more concerned with control than success. And when you're more concerned with control than success, you will eventually fail. Avan says Facebook would not allow the sharing of the Declaration of Independence, calling it hate speech. Yeah, Facebook they're propped up, but when the money for propping it up dries up, it'll collapse fast. Oakwood Bear points out, the agenda is so in your face, kids are aware of the bullshit at a younger age, creating an alt generation. I think that's true. I think it's absolutely true. Anyhow, I didn't appeal. What I did was I tried logging in. It didn't work. So then I asked them, why is this not working? And they said, your account will never be restored. I think I actually posted the message on the blog. Let me see if I can find it here. Okay. Okay. On returning to Twitter. No, I don't. That was... Oh, here we go. No, anyhow, I guess I didn't put it up there. But they made it very clear that there's, that I wouldn't be permitted. I was just curious to find out how serious they were about, we're letting everybody come back. I was like, yeah, we'll see about that. And of course it was nonsense. Swedish Trash Man says, The Sound of Freedom is just a regular film about trafficking, nothing revolutionary. It's just a film with a shitload of Spanish being spoken in it. People freaking out about it is hilarious and concerning. I don't know why it'd be concerning, but it's good that the subject is being broached, and it's good that people are identifying this as an issue. Here's the thing. Don't get excited about stuff. Jim Caviezel is not going to solve anything. Is he a good guy? Seems to be. But it's not it's not the biggest deal in the world. There is no answer other than Jesus Christ. So until he comes back and the world is awash in blood up to his saddle, Jordan Peterson's not the answer. Owen Benjamin's not the answer. I'm not the answer. Vladimir Putin's not the answer. There are no answers. So do what is right. It's not that difficult to know what you should do. Speak the truth. Attempt to build what is good, what is beautiful, and what is true. Are some of these people fake? Well, if they've got a career in Hollywood, probably. So we got our first super chat here. Thank you. They Call Me Cordell says, Any thoughts on Biden moving selected reserve to active duty? Well, it's a very small number. It's 3,000 troops moving to active duty and they're presumably doing this in order to move some troops over to Europe. My take on all of this stuff with regards to the U.S. military is that these guys don't know how to do anything but bluff. They know how to do two things. They know how to beat up on people that can't defend themselves, like, for example, Serbia. They're perfectly happy to bomb Serbia without doing anything, right? And the Serbians couldn't strike back, so they gave up. And Swedish Trash Pan says, apparently Biden was in favor of Ukraine joining NATO and saying would start World War III. It doesn't matter what Biden wants. It doesn't matter what Biden says. Biden's not in charge. The fundamental thing is that the neo-clowns who are running this have been very, very successful by playing the victim, bluffing, and beating up on people who can't defend themselves for 60 years. Think about it. Think about the mistakes that you've made because you kept doing what worked for you in the past. Now imagine how stuck in their ways these people are who have been very, very, very successful for 3 generations by doing the same sort of stuff. But it doesn't work anymore. They've tried calling Putin an anti-Semite. They've tried calling Xi Hitler. They've threatened, to use the U.S. military, which was back in 1999 very, very powerful. If you read about the Chinese reaction to the Iraqi war, the Chinese were shocked. The Chinese were terrified by how successful the U.S. was against a generally legitimate army. Remember, the Iraqi army was formidable and it was experienced from fighting the Iranians. And they got completely overrun and wiped out by the U.S. military. It was very impressive. Now, I have read some things postulating that Saddam Hussein took a dive. I don't really buy it. Certainly my uncle was commanding there. He never indicated anything about it, about noticing anything or seeing anything that was indicative of it being a show war. Not that you can necessarily take that as read. He also ended up being the commandant, so I don't think you get to a position like that without being without having to look the other way a few times, right? But yeah, it's when you're used to relying on word spells and redefinitions and getting people to go along with you, you lose the ability to even think about anything else. And so, yeah, Avon, these word games are stupid. Anti-Semite. Jesus spoke Aramaic, a Semitic language. Against Jesus equals anti-Semitic. No, that's playing their game. Don't play the word games. They're all nonsense. Actually, that has never worked ever. What works is completely ignoring them. Look at how it drives the neo-clowns crazy that neither she nor Putin nor Lavrov or anybody will even talk to them. It's kind of like dealing with a narcissist writ large. What does the narcissist require more than anything else? Contact. You can't confuse somebody with a word spell if the person doesn't listen to you. You know, that's the tack that I take with all this stuff. You know, I haven't watched the television news in decades. I don't pay any attention to it. You know, I don't pay any attention. You know, I mean, I wouldn't even know that I'm on a couple ADL lists here and there if friends hadn't drawn my attention to it. I don't pay them any attention whatsoever. Another super chat here from Katarian. Thank you, Katarian. Thank you for your service. If you want to describe it as that, you're welcome. Any more thoughts on generational differences in culture consumption? Well, the biggest differences are driven by technology. You know, not only were the boomers a very large generation demographically, but their interests were much more shared because their options were far more limited. And that might help explain the intensity of their attraction to the entertainment options of their youth. Starting with Gen X, you know, we were still there when we were young. You know, we can remember the 3 national channels plus public TV plus the local channel, right? But that was already changing. You know, I was on the board of a independent television station that was in the early vein of breaking that mold. You know, we were the Warner Brothers affiliate. It was a new television station, new shows, new, you know, things were starting to broaden. And then, of course, cable was already in place. You know, I mean, it was kind of funny because, you know, the one television that my friends and I actually watched was SportsCenter. I've never seen a single episode of Seinfeld. I've never seen a single episode of, I don't even know the name of it, Melrose Place. I didn't even see any of the Friends stuff until after I was married and I saw it in reruns. You know, we just, my college friends and I, all Gen X, we just didn't watch television. Now, that was probably because we were more, my friends and I were more into video games and computer games. You know, so we would play, you know, starting with Wizardry and Ultima, you know, going up through, I can still remember we went out and bought a Sega Genesis after we tried the original John Madden football on the Sega. We bought it. We tried it out at lunchtime during work. We bought it. We went back to the store after work was done, and bought it and stayed up until 3 a.m. just playing John Madden football. And I think that video games and computer games helped break the hold that television had on the boomers. And so music, I think, also tended to spread out a bit. The big change with music, and what really altered things was with music was the development of the synthesizer, and specifically the development of the MIDI standard. By 1990, you could play, not even by 1990, by 1988, you could compose and record all the instrumentation yourself. Prince was one of the earliest to do that. But I mean, here, I'm going to play you something just for kicks. This is something that Paul, my friend, did, and he would have done this back. I saw his band playing this in 1980. Was it 87 or? Let's see. It must have been 1987. So I mean, here's what people are doing in 1987 by themselves. Okay, so punk was actually very influential because even though the music was terrible, and people who had no interest in punk and who had actual musical talent still learned the do-it-yourself ethos. And that was a big, big change. Let's see if I have something here. Okay. Yeah, so here's this was the first song I actually saw. I'll tell you the whole story after this, but this is All Night Party. Hang on, I'll just stop it for a second. Gonna restart here. So remember, we've gone from the technology requiring you to get a record contract and get together, and one person does the guitar part, another person writes the bass part, and they all kind of come together. That was so. And now this is 1987-ish, and just one guy by himself doing everything. Anyhow, you get the point. So what fundamentally changed things between the boomer music and the Gen X music was the ability to, number one, do things yourself. Bear Mock Bear says, sounds Duran Duranish, English New Wave. That was exactly what Paul was into. Um, the and it was why I was drawn to him and his music immediately. And you've heard some of his new stuff. I mean, you guys have heard "Summertime." It's a great song. Um, but the point is that you could do that. You could do it, and you could record it, and maybe the quality would be horrible. Um, or maybe if you're good enough, it would sound really good. In the case of Paul, we formed Psychosonic. We got a record contract with Wax Tracks, and hence Psychosonic, which, by the way, still continues to have effects today because Dan from Psychosonic is still doing uh, soundtracks and stuff. He's done a bunch of soundtracks, including for the Devil Mouse. And Mike is the audio director of Epic Mega Games. So he's done all the stuff, all the post Unreal stuff, Gears of War, Fortnite. You know, that's all. That all goes back to that '80s sounding tune you just heard. You know, and I don't know that any of us, except Paul, would have ever gotten anywhere in the boomer era. I certainly wouldn't have. Pretty sure Dan wouldn't have. Mike, he's a good drummer, maybe. But and what that did is it opened things up. So now you've got all these different possibilities, and it's not so dominated by a small group of pre-selected, pre-approved, this is what you're going to listen to. And now, it's wide open. It's absolutely wide open. I mean, I found this guy on YouTube. His name's Connor, and he does this stuff that's kind of Blink 182-ish. I think the biggest number of views on any of his videos is like 2,000. I mean, nobody's listening to this stuff, but it's pretty good. I need to get back to the. They call me Cordell sent another super chat. Thank you. He says that Doom Ian party story makes me laugh sometime. I forget how much of a hardcore gamer Vox is. Well, at this point, I think you have to say more was, but yeah, I mean, when we were working on Intel and working on Rebel Moon Rising for Intel, the MMX chip program, we had 13 of their executives, plus the executive who was our champion. And they were visiting all the different game companies. So they visited Papyrus, they visited Epic, they visited everybody. And we thought we were in trouble because we just thought that Mike left this gigantic bong called Bongzilla in the middle of the living room. It was literally 4 feet high. And we were just thinking, wow, we're not going to get a contract on this one with all these people visiting us. We had a decent demo, but there's just, we called it the house we lived in was called the Digital Ghetto, and there's My Life with the Thrill Kill cult posters all over the place, all the free Wax Track stuff I've been sent, Sister Machine Gun Ministry. There's computers with 20-inch Hitachi monitors everywhere. 4 of the guys actually live in the house. It's a complete wreck. And I asked the guy who was our champion, I said, do you think that we're going to have a shot? And he said, yeah. He said, actually, I think you're looking really good. I said, really? He said, well, one of the guys just said to me, all the other companies, they do games, working on games is work. These guys quite clearly live and breathe it. And it was true. We didn't have a work day. I mean, you got up and you started working and you worked until you needed a break, and then we'd play some network game. We played Network Heretic, was our favorite. Doom was obviously where we all started, but Heretic had better multiplayer options. So we break and do that for a bit or whatever. But then everybody would be back to work, and we probably worked 14 to 16-hour days regularly. And the funny thing is, the guy was absolutely right. Of the 15 companies that they signed to do games for this project, ours was only one of 2 that finished on time. Because Intel does not hold up its chip releases. And that's how we managed to do 6 million units, right? The metal cover scene on YouTube is insane. It is. There's so many talented people. And, that's the one good thing. That's one of the few good things about the internet, is that you can find a lot of interesting, cool stuff that you never would have been able to see before the internet. So anyhow, well, that's all I've got for tonight, but just remember, don't support the things that hate you. Support the stuff that is good, that is beautiful, that is true. That's what you need to do. And I'm not saying, you need to be supporting Castalia history, or you need to be supporting this specific thing or that specific thing. You need to make the call, but whatever it is that you choose, it should be something that supports at least one of the good, the beautiful, and the true, and ideally all 3. And just because we played little Paul, he'd be mortified if I left it at that. So some of you have heard this tune before, but it is summer. This is one of the better summer-related tunes you're ever going to hear. So I'm going to fire it up. But this is as far as I know, it's his latest tune. So let's go ahead and fire it up, huh?
She said we were beyond time, forever together, but we were ships in the night, like fireflies in summer. goodbye, there's a warm night wind. When she's gone in a blink of an eye, there's a whole world aside. In this life we're like fireflies, there's a glowing world shining tonight. And now I'm flying into the flame of Valentine's. When your world has gone goodbye, but there's a warm wind that's blowing tonight. When she's gone in a blink of an eye, I'm leaving out life behind tonight. Because it's summertime. I don't care tonight. It's summertime. You're right this time. It's summertime. I don't care tonight. It's summertime. I don't care tonight. No. Leaving out life behind tonight. Because it's summertime. I don't care. Summertime. I'll be alright.
So that was Paul Sebastian's Summertime. You can find it on Spotify. And have a good evening. I'm Vox Day, and this is... Oh, hang on. We got a quick super chat here. Big Bear said, if you didn't have to have a motorcycle to go with that leather jacket, you may have had to pass this on to Owen. I did have, believe it or not, at that time, I did have a Suzuki 750, which was way too much bike for a beginner, but that's what I had. And but actually, the jacket was a lot crazier than you might think, because that was when I was in my martial arts phase, and I had the big flaming dragon on the back that said "Fighting Dragons." It was all airbrushed. It had these massive studs up the side. And frankly, it probably would have made, if it hadn't been for the fact that I was actually involved in the martial arts stuff, it probably would have looked really gay. But anyhow, on that note, I wish you all a good evening. I'm Vox Day, and this is the Darkstream.